and welcome to another episode of the DVD Graveyard. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at John Carpenter's The Thing from 1982. And this is one that I've looked forward to talking about for a very long time. And I just did my video over the top 5 John Carpenter films of all time, or my top 5 favorite, I guess you could say. I did that in preparation for John Carpenter's 78th birthday. And I actually recorded another review for this already, but I decided to start over because unfortunately on the day that I recorded it, I found out that Knowles, played by T.K. Carter in this film, he actually passed away on January 9th, 2026. He was 69 years old. And it was very unfortunate. He does have I wouldn't really say a minor role because none of the actors in this film have minor roles necessarily, because I think they're all kind of equally as important. Of course, you know, Kurt Russell's kind of your main star, but everybody kind of shares kind of an equal part in this movie. And I always really liked I like Knowles, in this movie. So rest in peace to T.K. Carter, the actor who played Knowles. Like I said, I just recorded that other the review for this, and I had heard that he had passed away that same day, as a matter of fact, that I recorded it. So I said I've got to pay some kind of tribute to him. I've got to say something. I have to say something about him. And of course, you know, Wilford Brimley from this movie has also passed away. He passed away in 2020, as a matter of fact. Donald Moffat, who was in this movie, he actually passed away in 2018. He played Gary. So there's a few of these guys who have passed away, sadly. So I'm sure I'm missing a couple of them. I think Copper has passed away as well, Dr. Copper. Richard Dysart, or Desart, however you say his name. I believe he passed away. I just can't remember exactly when. So if I'm forgetting anybody, I do apologize. All these men in this film are great, and they deserve recognition. And like I said, they are in one of my favorite horror films of all time, The Thing from 1982. I don't see how anyone couldn't just absolutely love this movie. Like I said, this movie is just groundbreaking special effects wise. Had some excellent effects done by Rob Bottin, who worked closely with Stan Winston, and I believe Stan Winston actually had some a hand in some of the effects in this movie. And of course, masterfully directed by John Carpenter, based on it's actually a loose remake of The Thing from Another World from 1951, which I think I said in my John Carpenter video. I actually do love The Thing from Another World. I do like a lot of those classic old films from the 30s, 40s, 50s. You know, I'm a huge Universal Monsters fan, and I love The Thing from Another World. It's such a great movie. It's a really nice, cozy movie. They're both based on the short story Who Goes There, written by John W. Campbell, and which is also was turned into Frozen Hell, which basically there was like, I think 40 something pages or so that were not added to the original story that I guess they found many years later, and that was added on to the story. Giving it a little bit more depth, and just making it a little bit longer. I have both. I have Who Goes There and Frozen Hell, and I've read both versions. Frozen Hell is the way to read it if you get the chance, and it's a good book. I don't read many books, but Who Goes There is an excellent story. And whereas the original film, the original Thing from Another World, it takes ideas from that story, mainly the kind of the setting, a lot of the stuff like that is very similar, but that one is more of the classic monster film. Like it's like a Frankenstein monster, attacking these people at this Antarctic base. Whereas this film really took the shapeshifter idea and the idea of all the paranoia, all the madness that ensues, the distrust. It really took all that stuff that was in the novel and really brought that forward. And I believe they focused on that a lot more, which was really nice because that's what made the novel so great, or the novella, or the short story, or however you want to say it, whatever you want to call it. The book, that's really what the book was all about. And I think even John Carpenter said that the creature, the thing, can kind of symbolizes because it takes on any form it wants. So it really symbolizes just anything that you're afraid of, and really kind of plays on that distrust of your fellow man. So it's kind of got I don't really want to say a complex, but a fairly deep narrative undertone if you want it, rather than just looking at it as a straight up 80s monster movie. But either way, whether you want to look at it as a psychological film in that sense, or if you want to look at it as a straight monster movie, either way, you are not going to be disappointed because this movie is so great. I can't say enough good things about it. And my love for this movie really started a long time ago at this point. Shit. I mean, it's been, I was in middle school when I first saw this film. And I have a similar story about this with the movie Wrong Turn 4, Bloody Beginnings, which that movie is not great, but I have a soft spot for it. And it's pretty much for the same reason that I'm going to talk about with The Thing right now. But I remember I bought this movie. I want to say I was in 6th grade or 7th grade. I was really young, and that was really when I started collecting horror movies, like seriously collecting in middle school, probably 6th grade. I want to say around, I don't even remember. I remember the first movie I got, which, that I bought myself, which I will talk about that in another video that I have planned. But this is one that I remember always hearing about. I've always been a big John Carpenter fan. John Carpenter has always been a, kind of a household name in my house. I grew up watching Halloween and The Fog and a lot of his films. And this is one that I always used to hear about, people talk about, or I would see it in reviews, so this is one that always popped up. The Thing is great, this and that about The Thing, and I'd never seen it. And I remember I was at Hastings. If anybody remembers Hastings, I miss it dearly. But every day I think about Hastings. But anyway, I was at Hastings, and my parents would do this thing where, like if we were doing good in school, which I wasn't doing good often, they would give us, a small allowance. It really wasn't much. But I would always spend my money on movies. Like that's what I always bought. And I went up there and I saw a copy of The Thing, and I was like, I'm going to go ahead and get this. And I still have the original copy I bought. But I was like, I'm going to go ahead and get this now because I've heard so much about it, and I'm going to sit down and watch it and see what all the hype is about. And I remember I got it, and I didn't watch it for a couple of days for whatever reason. I was still in school, so and I just had a lot of stuff going on at the time. But I remember I was either sick or we were out of school, we were on break or something like that. But I was just at home for like a week. I remember that much. It did snow that week, and it was really, really cold. And I remember just putting this movie on one night on just a whim. I finally sat down and I was like, I'm going to go ahead and put The Thing on and see what all the hype is about. And it absolutely entranced me. I mean, I was so deeply involved in this film while I was watching it. I mean, I watched it pretty much every night. I went through a phase of this week or so where I would watch this movie every night without fail. I mean, it was just such a cozy, kind of comforting movie for me, even though it's not comforting at all in the subject matter. But it was just such a cozy movie that really made me feel at home, and it gives you that really nice kind of. It's one of those movies that is perfect to watch on a cold, snowy night. Whenever you don't have nothing else going on, and you just want to watch a good horror movie, especially if you want to watch one that has a lot of snow. This is one to put on. Just the feeling of isolation and the kind of just being kind of trapped in this place. I already like movies like that where you're kind of trapped somewhere. Like I'm kind of even drawing a blank. I can't even really think of anything off the top of my head. Like John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness as another example, where they're kind of trapped in that church. Anytime you're kind of stuck in a situation like that in a film, that's something I really like. I like the whole kind of trapped inside somewhere and there's a monster lurking about. And I really liked that idea of it just being this Antarctic base, where, it's kind of like a whodunit, like a like a giallo or like a Agatha Christie type novel, like something like a Then There Were None, or something like that, but with an alien creature. So I really loved that idea, and I still love that idea. And this movie, again, it delivered. I mean, it was everything I wanted it to be, and even still to this day, I love this movie. I own at least 3 copies of it that I'm aware of. I'm going to read the plot synopsis, and I'm not going to delve too deeply on the review. Actually, this again, like I've been doing recently with some of these more well-known movies, especially, it's going to be just kind of a brief, more of an appreciation video, if anything. But this one I have right here is the Scream Factory release. I have the original DVD copy I've got in there still, which is like the collector's edition, which is still a fine DVD copy. It has a lot of really good special features and has a great. I think the documentary that's actually on that DVD is on this Blu-ray I have. It's really good. I highly recommend anyone watch it if you get the chance, if you're a fan of this movie. And then, of course, I have another Blu-ray copy of this that I don't even know where I got that. I've just had it. But anyway. Horror master John Carpenter, Halloween, Escape from New York, delivers a masterful exercise in claustrophobic suspense with elaborate special effects that set a high standard for films that followed, says TV Guide. Kurt Russell's iconic and tense performance drives this chilling version of the classic The Thing. In the winter of 1982, a 12-man research team at a remote Antarctic research station discovers an alien buried in the snow for over 100,000 years. Soon unfrozen, the form-changing alien wreaks havoc, creates terror, and becomes one of them. Just like it said, basically this movie, we start out in the very opening scene. We get this helicopter that's chasing this dog, and they're shooting at this like kind of husky breed dog, and we don't know why. I think even John Carpenter said when you put this movie on, it feels like the end of the world. And just another quick kind of side note, this is, I believe, the first film in John Carpenter's apocalypse trilogy. You could say, again, it's a trilogy in the same way that Lucio Fulci's Gates of Hell trilogy. They're not connected in any way, shape, or form, but they deal with similar themes. So we start with The Thing. Then we get Prince of Darkness, and then In the Mouth of Madness. And I feel like They Live should technically be considered in that trilogy, but that's just me. Which it wouldn't really so much be a trilogy then, it'd be a quadrilogy. But anyway, that's beside the point. And we meet our cast of characters. So, of course, we've got Kurt Russell, who plays McCready. Keith David, who plays Childs, Wilford Brimley, who plays Blair, T.K. Carter, again, like I said, who has just recently passed away, who plays Knowles, Richard Mauser, who plays Clark, Donald Moffat, who plays Gary, David Clennon, who plays Palmer, Larry Franco is one of the Norwegian pilots, Thomas Waits, who plays Windows, Joel Polis, who plays Fuchs, Richard Dysart, who plays Copper, excuse me, Charles Hallahan, who plays Norris, Peter Maloney, who plays George Bennings, and then there's also Norbert Weiser, I believe is how you say his name, and he plays the other Norwegian. And I think that's everybody. That's everybody I have listed anyway. So, and pretty much I just took the list straight off Google. But anyway, those are our men, and they encounter these 2 Norwegian guys. And when the one Norwegian guy gets off the helicopter, one of them dies. He ends up throwing a grenade, and it slips out of his hand or something, and it blows up the helicopter. And the one Norwegian actually tells the entire plot of not the whole plot of the movie, but he tells what the dog is and why he's shooting it. If I'm not mistaken, if you speak Norwegian, you would understand what he says. But he actually tells what's going on. So if you speak Norwegian, it just kind of ruins the surprise right there in the beginning. And basically, the one of the crew members is shot of the American crew, and the other Norwegian fellow is killed. And so they bring this dog inside, and they're trying to figure out kind of what's going on, why they were shooting at this dog and what the big deal is. So they decide to go investigate the Norwegian camp because they're at another Antarctic base, researching whatever they're researching. So McCready and a couple of the other doctors, the other guys, they decide to go and kind of see what was going on. And again, this was also done in The Thing from Another World. They do this same thing. They kind of go investigate what's going on, and they find out that the Norwegian crew has found a flying saucer that's been buried in the ice for about 100,000 years. Which is just such a really creepy concept too, especially because they find that there's another square cut out of the ice where they're assuming the pilot was taken out of. So they go to the Norwegian camp, and after they they find this, or before, something like that in there, and they find everyone is dead, and the whole Norwegian camp has just been destroyed, and it's just in shambles, and they don't know what's going on. It's just a really eerie kind of setup. Like, I mean, something bad happened here, just the way that you see kind of the aftermath of all this. Which would later be explained in another film that I'm going to mention at the end of this. So pretty much what ensues is they discover the dog in an excellent scene. The dog transforms into this grotesque monster that just has no real form, which was kind of, I believe, Rob Bottin's idea. Was, gave it the idea that it can transform into basically anything that it's imitated before. So you get all these really wild and crazy things that this thing can transform into, and it's excellent. I mean, it always looks like something different, and it's some of the most unique and interesting gore effects, and that's just something I want to harp on big time in this. Is the effects in this movie are so damn good. And that's one thing, how people even to this day will be like, they'll say practical. I mean, not everybody, I know that there's a lot of big fans of practical effects, me, myself being one of them. But a lot, I've heard some people say that practical effects they look too fake, and it kind of takes them out of the movie. But this movie is a prime example of how well practical effects can be done, and how realistic and how just excellent they can look, because everything in this movie looks amazing. I mean, they were firing on all cylinders. They had an excellent team of people to work on this movie, from the actors to the special effects to the music. I mean, everything in this movie is just top notch, excellent. And so, like I said, after they see this dog thing transform, Blair, one of the doctors, Wilford Brimley's character, he kind of does some research on this and finds out that this thing can take over, just one particle of this thing basically can take over an entire organism, and it can replicate an organism perfectly. I mean, to a T. Which is horrifying, if you really think about it. And that is where all the horror from this movie comes in, is because you don't know who the thing is. I mean, the whole movie, it could literally be anyone. Of course, we get the great scene with Bennings. He runs out into the snow, and he is in mid-transformation. And this is such a creepy scene. Like, this is probably one of my favorite scenes from the movie, is when they go out and they see Bennings out in the snow, and he just lets out this horrifying scream, and then they burn him, right there on the spot, and they kill it. And it's so scary. Just the thought of this thing, and basically it comes down to where each piece of this thing is a whole, like it's its own creature. So even if there's one thing, but it becomes multiple things, I guess you could say. And that's really kind of brought on by the scene with Norris, which I really want to talk about, because it's probably my very favorite scene in the film, is, and I think a lot of people's, is whenever Norris kind of passes out later in the movie, and they're trying to do CPR on him, and they have like the defibrillator paddles, and they go to shock him with the paddles, and I believe it's copper that's on top of him. His arms go through Norris's stomach, and Norris's stomach has these wicked, gnarly looking teeth, and they chomp down on Copper's arms and rip his arms to pieces. And then another monster comes out of his stomach, and then his head, pulls itself off and grows legs and starts to crawl across the room. It's so just brilliant. I mean, it's amazing. Again, when I saw that for the first time, whenever I was a young boy, I that just blew my mind. I never thought I could see something so just fucking crazy like that. I mean, my jaw was on the floor. Like, I mean, literally, that just blew me away. I mean, that whole sequence right there is amazing. And then from there, of course, like I said, the effects are just masterful. And from there, that's where McCready gets the idea that like I said earlier, each piece of this thing is its own entity. Like when Norris's head comes off and grows legs, it kind of becomes its own thing that can shapeshift into whatever it wants. Again, super cool idea, and a really intimidating idea too. Like, if you had to make a movie off this concept and build everything all practically, I mean, that's such a daunting task. And I think John Carpenter even said that he probably had the most prep time for this movie, where he could get everything arranged, and I think that really benefited and really helped out, because he could really get kind of the best of the best to do this movie and really kind of work everything out in the way that they need to and storyboard everything. And just like I said, this movie is a perfect example of them kind of firing on all cylinders. And basically, we just start to lose, everybody just starts to lose their mind, and starts blaming everyone, and is super paranoid about everybody else. And we get the blood testing scene, where, they're doing the test to see, who is the thing. And they're all like, oh, this is bullshit. This is never going to work. And then, of course, we get the blood actually comes alive out of the petri dish, and, attacks. I almost said Chuck Norris. Sorry, Kurt Russell. I don't know why I almost said Chuck Norris. Kurt Russell. It attacks him, then just kind of crawls away across the floor. And Palmer starts to mutate into this thing, and he flies up and hits the ceiling, and he kills windows, and it's incredible. Incredible. Again, I cannot say that enough. And so anyway, after they deal with this situation, they decide to give Blair the blood test, because he kind of lost his shit earlier in the movie, and he's been trapped in this kind of tool shed thing that they have outside, so that he can't harm anybody or harm himself. And when they get out there, they find out that Blair is the thing, or a thing, and they don't know for how long, or anything like that. But they find out that he's been, basically breaking out and stealing parts from the helicopter and everything else, and trying to build this kind of aircraft that he has down there, which probably wouldn't make it in space, but it probably would have at least taken him, taken him out of the camp. So they find that out, and the power gets cut, and of course they're like, this is suicide, that why would it do that? And just like McCready says, it's going to kill us, but that's what the thing wants. Is it wants to just hibernate. It just wants to go to sleep in the cold and wait till the rescue team comes and wakes it up and then takes it to the mainland. So again, that's also a horrifying thought, especially knowing just how intelligent this thing actually is, because I'm assuming it kind of gets everyone's knowledge that it imitates, kind of like the film Horror Express from '73, which is also another great film I'd love to talk about, which I believe was also based off the novel, the short story, Who Goes There, because it's a kind of a similar concept. But anyway, great film. I look forward to talking about that too. So what they do is they decide to just blow up the camp. Gary and Knowles, I believe, and Childs and McCready, they're all the ones that are left. And Childs, of course, he gets separated, and then the others are killed, and McCready kind of has this final standoff with the thing, and he blows it up, and he blows up the whole base. Everything is just destroyed. They're lighting stuff on fire and planting dynamite and everything else, and just blowing the whole base to pieces. At the very end, McCready kind of comes out at the very end and sits down next to all the wreckage kind of around the fire, and just kind of sits down with his bottle of J&B Scotch, and that's when Childs kind of shows up out of nowhere, and Childs sits down with him, and he's kind of skeptical about him at first, and they're both kind of like, how did you survive? How did you make it? Whatever, and they're just kind of agree to just kind of sit down and chill, because at this point they're just so tired of fucking with it and dealing with it. They just want to kind of hang out and just die, I guess. They're just over it. They don't want to deal with it anymore, because if they die, the thing is not their problem anymore. The whole reason they're doing this is to save the entire world, because again, Blair did a simulation earlier in the film, and it basically said, I think after 27,000 hours of first contact with the thing, the entire world population would be infected by the thing, which also is a horrifying thought. So they sit down, and this is where a lot of people, I don't really want to say it divided, but the way that the ending is done is it's left completely open to interpretation, which again, I love. I much rather would have an ending like that, especially to a film like this. It works so well to do it this way. To just leave it open and let you kind of decide what you want to go with in your personal headcanon. But there's many theories about this, and basically it boils down to, is MacReady the thing, is Childs the thing, or are they both the thing, or are neither of them the thing? Because really that's all your options you have there. So I personally, I don't know. Like, I'm always on the fence about it, but I usually go back to, I think MacReady is the thing. And the reason I say that is just because at the very end of the movie, what I think, what happens is basically they sit down together. MacReady hands the bottle of scotch over to Childs, and Childs drinks it, and then MacReady starts to kind of laugh and chuckle, and then we fade to black and we get the credits. The reason why I think MacReady is the thing is I think he's chuckling because he is now infected Childs, basically, because remember, one particle of this thing is enough to take over an entire being. So I think that that's what was going on. And also because there's a scene earlier in the movie where we get a pair of MacReady's clothes that actually have his name on them that are all torn. And it's said earlier in the movie that, even MacReady says this. He says, I'm pretty sure it tears through your clothes whenever it takes you over, or whenever you transform or whatever. So I personally would like to believe that MacReady is a thing. But again, that's just my headcanon, and it's never confirmed. So I really love that. Another theory is that Childs is the thing, and what MacReady had in that bottle was actually kerosene, because he had made a bunch of Molotovs at the end of the film. And when Childs drinks this, being an alien, he doesn't really know what liquor tastes like. So he drinks the kerosene, because we never see Kurt Russell actually drink it. We never he almost does, but we never actually witness him drink it. He almost takes a swig of it, which is why this one I don't believe as much. But that's why MacReady is laughing, because at the end is because he's like, oh, this motherfucker just gave himself away. So that's another theory. But everyone, there's so many theories about the ending to this film, and I think it's whatever you want it to be. That's what they were kind of going for with this. So, and that's the thing. That's the film. And so kind of to segue off of that point, how it ends, how it's left open to interpretation. There are talks of a sequel to this film. And I really, really, really sincerely hope that they do not make a sequel to this film. I don't want a remake of it. Even though this movie technically is a remake, I don't want a remake. But if I had a choice, I would rather have a remake than a sequel. Just because, why would you ruin such the beauty of this ambiguous ending? Again, the ending is left that way on purposefully. It's not. Why would you ruin that? It's basically just saying, fuck you to the ending of this film. It just completely takes away from it. And I personally think that story, the story of the thing, has been told. I don't think we need any more of that. There's no other way for it to work, I think, personally. So I am completely against a sequel to the thing. This is one of the greatest horror movies of all time, and I just personally think a sequel would ruin it. I think it's one of those that, like, even if something is remade or something gets a sequel, that I don't really care to see, or I don't really want or anything, I'll still go see it, just to kind of see what it's all about. And I've been pleasantly surprised before. Like, Halloween 2018 was a pleasant surprise for me, as an example. But The Thing, I think it would be, I'm not going to say I'm going to boycott it, I'm going to protest it, but it is just not going to be something that, it's not something I want. It's not something I'm going to look forward to. So please do not make a sequel to this film. And I know that the ending is kind of ruined in the video game for PS2 and Xbox, the Thing video game, which I haven't played in many years. I never beat it, but I played it a long time ago. But I don't really remember. I want to say that in that game, McCready he is the Thing. But again, I don't really consider that game canon necessarily. John Carpenter is also in the video game, as a matter of fact. I know that much as well. He makes a cameo appearance. I don't think that the ending needs any explanation. I think the movie is perfect just the way it is. Now, having said that, there is a prequel to this film, The Thing from 2011, which, I mean, I'm more okay with a prequel. I'm not crazy about The Thing from 2011. It was okay from what I remember. It's basically a rehash of this movie, just done worse, pretty much. And it's a lot more action oriented, whereas this film really plays a lot more on suspense and the fear and the impending doom, throughout the whole movie. Whereas The Thing 2011 is a lot more just in your face. You get a lot more monster effects. You get a lot more kill scenes with these horrifying kills, and it kind of explains the whole and it's basically explaining what happened at the Norwegian camp, which we didn't really need. Again, I liked it a lot better being left ambiguous, where we don't know what's going on. So I haven't seen The Thing 2011 in a long time, and I've almost kind of forgotten it. Like, I remember things about it, but I've honestly forgotten most of the plot. So the only thing I remember about it is I remember thinking, like, this is pretty much The Thing 1982 redone from a different angle with really crappy CGI. And that's another thing about that film that I talked about this earlier, is they had some really badass looking practical effects for The Thing 2011. The practical effects looked amazing, but they covered it all over with CGI because the test audiences said that it looked too fake, or it kind of took them out of the movie, so they just kind of covered everything over with CGI. And I think that that's just kind of an insult to take a film that was basically a landmark in practical effects and just cover it over with CGI. So that's just really sad. So maybe I'll talk about The Thing 2011 another day. But for now, I want to show my appreciation for The Thing from 1982, John Carpenter's masterpiece, in my opinion. It didn't get a lot of love at the box office. It came out the same year as E.T., and we all know how popular E.T. is, even still to this day. So that's kind of why this movie failed. It was another alien film, but it was a lot more dark and gritty and nihilistic, and just, it wasn't really what people wanted to see. Everybody was taking their kids to see the family friendly movie, and honestly, that's an unfortunate thing for a lot of John Carpenter's films. A lot of his films kind of flopped at the box office, but they made their money back on home video, and now they all have an immense cult following. I love John Carpenter. Again, like I said, one of my favorite directors of all time, if you saw that last video I did. And this is absolutely, without a doubt, my favorite John Carpenter film, and one of my favorite horror films of all time. I mean, that is one thing I'm certain about. I'd like to actually make a list of my favorite horror films of all time, but it would be so hard to do because there's so many. But this is definitely one that would, without a doubt, be on there. I don't even question that. So if you have not seen this film, Um, I highly recommend going out and checking it out as soon as possible, especially right now during winter time. It's nice and cold. It's not snowing here, of course, where I'm at, but it's a great kind of lock yourself in the house late at night, on a really cold night, and just really invest yourself in this movie. And it's excellent. I cannot say enough good things about it, and I will never stop loving it. Thank you to John Carpenter for all of your excellent work on all of these films that you've done. I really look forward to talking about more John Carpenter films. Like I said, again, one of my favorite directors of all time. Rest in peace to T.K. Carter, who played Knowles. Like I said, he just passed away, like on the 9th of this month. I just recorded a review of the thing, and I decided to redo it because I wanted to give him a little tribute kind of in there. So rest in peace to T.K. Carter. You were great in this film. So that is it from me. Like I said, great film. As always, have a great night. I hope you enjoyed this review, and until next time, stay tuned and have a good night.